Have you ever wondered why spiritually awake people guard certain truths, as if revealing them could break something sacred inside them? It is not secrecy for the sake of mystery. It is a quiet instinct, born the moment you cross that inner threshold where perception sharpens. Illusions fall away and you begin to see what others cannot yet sense. When spiritual awakening deepens, your relationship with information changes. You no longer speak to be understood. You speak only when a truth can be received. At this stage, your awareness becomes almost magnetic. You feel the subtle emotional temperature of a room, the intentions behind words, the hidden tension behind smiles. And suddenly, sharing everything you know feels unnatural, even dangerous, because awakening transforms not only what you see, but how you hold what you see. This is where the silent shift begins. You realize that certain experiences of consciousness cannot be translated without being distorted. Certain insights, if spoken too soon, can isolate you or confuse those who are still navigating the early layers of perception. And perhaps this is the real threshold no one warns you about. The moment you understand that protecting what you know is not fear, but maturity. You start to sense which truths illuminate and which truths overwhelm, which inner revelations expand someone's understanding and which ones only create resistance. And this discernment becomes part of your awakening itself, shaping how you walk, speak, listen, and choose what to reveal or withhold as your awareness grows. Have you ever felt this inner hesitation, this sense that some experiences are meant to be carried rather than explained? You are not alone. And before we explore the first hidden piece of information awake, people should never reveal. Tell me your experience below. Your comment helps deepen this conversation, and while you are here, remember to like the video and check if you are already subscribed so you do not miss the next insights that unfold from this journey, as what comes next may resonate even more deeply as we continue. When spiritual awakening begins to settle into your everyday awareness, something profound happens to the way you relate to truth itself. You start to recognize that not every inner transformation is meant to be spoken aloud, because language was never designed to hold the full weight of higher perception. What once felt natural to explain now feels strangely fragile, almost as if putting certain realizations into words would distort them or drain their power. And this shift is not about becoming distant or mysterious. It is about understanding that awakening refines the very structure of communication. You begin to see that words are tools for the mind, but awakening speaks in symbols, sensations, intuitions, and silent knowing. This is why spiritually awake individuals often appear more observant, less reactive, more attuned to subtleties others overlook. You sense the hidden motives behind conversations, the emotional dissonance behind polite gestures, the unspoken conflicts beneath casual moments. And yet, you also sense the futility of explaining what you perceive to someone who is not yet ready to understand their own inner landscape. It becomes clear that truth must be invited, not imposed. You realize that awakening is not something you convince others of. It is something that unfolds within them when the inner soil is prepared. As you adjust to this new way of sensing reality, your silence becomes intentional rather than withdrawn. You begin withholding certain insights, not out of fear, but out of respect for the natural timing of consciousness. You learn that revealing too much too soon can disrupt someone else's growth or even create confusion, where clarity is meant to emerge in its own rhythm. This discernment develops quietly, almost instinctively. It shapes your interactions, your relationships, your inner boundaries. You start choosing what to share based not on what you know, but on what the moment can hold. And in this refinement, your awakening deepens even more. And all of this prepares the foundation for understanding the first pieces of information that should never slip from someone who has awakened. Because these truths carry an energy that must be handled with precision and inner stability, something we continue exploring as the deeper layers of this path unfold. The first piece of information spiritually awake individuals should never share is the exact moment or mechanism of their breakthrough. Awakening is deeply personal, shaped by an inner sequence of perceptions that cannot be replicated or explained in a linear way. When you describe the moment your awareness shifted, People often try to compare it to their own experiences or force themselves into a journey that is not aligned with their internal timing. This unintentionally creates misunderstanding or even resistance. The essence of awakening is not in the event itself, but in the internal transformation it ignites. When you keep that moment protected, you allow it to remain intact, free from external opinions or distortions that could weaken its meaning within you. The second piece you must guard is the intuitive knowledge that arrived with your awakening. These insights often come as impressions, silent recognitions, or sudden clarity about patterns, relationships, or life paths. They are not conclusions reached through logic, but revelations that emerge from a higher state of perception. If you try to verbalize them prematurely, they lose their depth. Others may challenge them, misunderstand them, or interpret them through the lens of fear or skepticism, which can subtly influence your confidence in what you know internally. Spiritual insight is delicate at first. It needs time to root itself before being shared. Protecting these early revelations strengthens your inner stability and reinforces the connection between your consciousness and what it has begun to realize. As these insights deepen, you start noticing how people react differently to you, sensing a shift they cannot name. Some become drawn to your presence, seeking clarity through you. Others feel confronted, even without you saying anything. This contrast reinforces why the first two pieces of information must remain guarded. You understand that awakening changes the energy you carry, and not everyone is prepared to engage with what that energy unveils. Holding these truths quietly becomes part of your spiritual maturity, shaping the way you move through the world as your awareness continues expanding into even more subtle layers of perception that we will soon uncover. The third piece of information a spiritually awake person should never reveal is the emotional decoding they perform silently during interactions. When your awareness expands, you begin to read people in ways they are not conscious of. You sense what they are, not saying the wounds they are hiding, the intentions they mask beneath politeness. You perceive the subtle tension in their voice, the energetic shifts in their presence, the inner conflict behind their reactions. But this sensitivity must stay protected. If you tell someone exactly what you see within them before they are prepared to confront it, the result is almost always defensiveness, denial, or distance. Awakening sharpens your perception, but wisdom teaches you when to keep that perception unspoken. This hidden clarity becomes a quiet compass, guiding your choices without needing external validation. You begin to separate who is drawn to your presence from who is threatened by it. You notice who becomes unsettled because your awareness mirrors something they avoid within themselves. Yet you also understand that exposing these inner readings would cross a boundary, turning your gift into an intrusion. People must arrive at their own truths through their own timing. Your role is not to reveal their shadows, but to protect your ability to see them without letting it disrupt your equilibrium. This is why the third piece of information must remain guarded. It preserves your spiritual integrity and prevents unnecessary conflict. It also anchors your emotional stability, keeping you rooted in presence rather than in reaction. The more you honor this silent discernment, the more naturally your path unfolds, shaping the next layers of awakening that build upon this deeper understanding of human nature. And just as this perception deepens within you, it quietly prepares the ground for the fourth piece of information that must remain protected, one that influences not only your relationships, but the very pace of your spiritual growth. Before we continue, share what this stirred inside you. Comment your reflection or experience so we can deepen this conversation together. The fourth piece of information you must never reveal once you are spiritually awake is the identity of the people you have outgrown. Awakening shifts your internal landscape so profoundly that certain connections no longer align with your expanded perception. You begin to feel when someone drains your energy, interrupts your clarity, or anchors you to an older version of yourself. This recognition is not judgment. It is intuition adjusting your path. But naming these individuals, exposing who no longer resonates with your journey, only creates unnecessary conflict and misunderstanding. Most people cannot comprehend why your inner world changed or why their influence no longer fits the person you are becoming. As your awareness sharpens, you naturally release relationships that once felt essential. You do this quietly, without announcement or explanation, because awakening teaches you that growth happens in silence. If you reveal who you are stepping away from, you risk provoking reactions that disrupt your emotional equilibrium. Some will try to pull you back into familiar patterns. Others may accuse you of being distant, cold, or transformed in ways they cannot understand. Protecting this information is not about hiding. It is about honoring the sacred transitions shaping your evolution. What most never realize is that spiritual awakening recalibrates your ability to give and receive energy. The people you outgrow reflect chapters that have served their purpose, and acknowledging that privately allows you to move with grace rather than friction. You begin choosing spaces where your consciousness expands rather than contracts. You become more selective with the voices you allow near your inner world. And this quiet reorganization becomes one of the most transformative aspects of your awakening, creating the emotional clarity needed to continue navigating the deeper layers that are still unfolding within you. This silence forms the bridge to the next insight, one that touches the core of why awakened individuals guard their inner experiences with such intention, and why certain truths must remain unspoken as your awareness widens. The fifth piece of information a spiritually awake person should never share is the depth of the perceptions that cannot be translated into ordinary language. As your awareness expands, you begin to sense reality in layers that most people are not yet prepared to acknowledge. You perceive emotional undercurrents, symbolic meanings behind everyday events, and subtle energetic shifts that reveal more than words ever could. These insights do not arrive as thoughts, but as an immediate knowing, a silent recognition that bypasses logic entirely. Trying to explain them would not only dilute their meaning, but also expose you to skepticism that could weaken your trust in what you intuitively understand. There are moments when your inner clarity reveals patterns long before they manifest externally. You may foresee shifts in relationships, changes in your environment, or transformations within yourself before any visible signs appear. But sharing these perceptions prematurely creates misunderstanding. People anchored in the material world interpret your insight as exaggeration, fear, or imagination because they cannot feel the energetic movements you perceive with ease. Protecting these intuitive impressions preserves their integrity and allows them to guide you without interference. Awakening also heightens your sensitivity to the emotional truth behind situations others accept at face value. You feel when something is ending, even if every external piece seems stable. You sense when someone is hiding pain, even when they smile. You recognize when a path is calling you forward, even if logic insists you stay where you are. This depth of awareness can become overwhelming for those who do not yet have the inner structures to hold it. By keeping these perceptions private, you prevent confusion and protect your own emotional grounding. This guarded relationship with your intuitive world becomes a silent anchor, allowing you to walk with clarity while others navigate their own unfolding. And as this inner perception strengthens, it naturally leads you toward the next protected truth, one that shapes how you move, who you trust, and what you choose to reveal as your awakening deepens. The sixth piece of information a spiritually awake person must never reveal is the true extent of their inner detachment. Awakening softens your attachment to outcomes, expectations, and even identities that once defined you. You begin to move through life with a quiet neutrality, not because you no longer care, but because your consciousness has shifted into a higher vantage point. From this elevated perspective, you see how temporary every moment is, how fluid every emotion can be, and how every situation unfolds according to an intelligence greater than personal desire. But speaking openly about this inner detachment can easily be misunderstood as coldness or indifference by those who still measure value through emotional intensity and external validation. People who are not awakened often depend on predictable emotional responses to feel secure. When they sense your calm neutrality, they may become unsettled. They may interpret your silence as distance, your acceptance as passivity, or your inner peace as a refusal to engage. Revealing how deeply detached you have become disrupts their sense of relationship and challenges their perception of connection. Protecting this truth allows you to maintain your presence without triggering unnecessary fear or misunderstanding in others. This inner detachment is not about withdrawing from life. It is the ability to remain open, grounded, and aligned while everything around you continues to shift. It allows you to navigate conflict without absorbing it, to witness emotional storms without losing yourself, and to let go of what is leaving without resisting its departure. This is why the sixth piece of information must remain your silent companion. It protects your balance and honors the sacred privacy of your awakened state. As this detachment deepens, it shapes every decision, every relationship, and every step on your path, and it prepares you for the next layer of awakening that quietly unfolds as your perception continues expanding beyond what the ordinary mind can grasp. Before we go deeper, share your reflection in the comments. Your voice adds meaning to this journey and helps expand the conversation we are building together. As your awakening deepens, a natural form of isolation begins to emerge, not as loneliness, but as a recalibration of your inner world. You start withdrawing from noise, chaos, and the emotional turbulence that once felt normal. This is not a chosen separation, but a quiet response to the heightened sensitivity that awakening brings. Your mind seeks clarity instead of distraction, your heart seeks authenticity instead of performance, and your intuition seeks stillness instead of constant stimulation. Gradually, the spaces and people that once shaped your identity no longer resonate with the frequency of your expanding awareness. This isolation is misunderstood by those who have not experienced awakening. They may interpret your distance as disinterest or withdrawal, unaware that your inner world is becoming more vivid, more complex, and more demanding of silence. You begin to understand that isolation is not a punishment. It is a sanctuary. It gives you space to process perceptions that others cannot yet see, to integrate insights without interruption, and to observe life with a level of depth that requires solitude. As you retreat inward, your perception becomes sharper, your emotional clarity stronger, and your intuition more precise. What you may not realize at first is that this isolation also protects your energy. When you are spiritually awake, you feel the weight of environments, the density of unspoken emotions, and the tension hidden beneath ordinary conversations. Too much exposure can scatter your focus or disrupt your inner balance. Isolation becomes a natural filter, allowing only what aligns with your expanded consciousness to enter. You start choosing your interactions with intentionality, guided not by habit but by resonance. This quiet separation often marks a turning point in the awakening journey. You stop seeking validation from the world and begin trusting the internal movement of your consciousness. You notice that the more you honor this isolation, the more your awareness expands, preparing you for deeper layers of spiritual growth that unfold beyond the noise of everyday life. And it is within this growing silence that the next phase of awakening begins to shape itself, revealing new internal pathways that call you further inward. Preserving your energy becomes one of the most essential disciplines once spiritual awakening takes root. You begin to notice how easily your clarity can be disrupted by environments filled with emotional chaos or conversations rooted in ego-driven conflict. What once felt normal now feels draining, even disorienting. This sensitivity is not a weakness. It is the natural consequence of perceiving life through a heightened level of awareness. You start to realize that protecting your inner space is not optional. It is the foundation that allows your awakening to remain stable and continuous. As you grow more attuned to subtle shifts in energy, you instinctively step back from situations that pull you into unnecessary tension. You become deliberate about what you consume, who you spend time with, and where you place your attention. At this stage, you understand that not every argument deserves your response, not every invitation deserves your presence, and not every emotional burden belongs to you. This quiet discernment shapes your boundaries, helping you conserve the energy needed to support your expanding Consciousness. You also learn that maintaining your awakening requires emotional neutrality. When you engage with conflict from the same level of intensity as those around you, your awareness becomes clouded. But when you remain centered, observing without absorbing, your perception stays clear. This balanced stance allows you to navigate the world without losing the depth you have gained. It becomes a silent skill, one that guides your steps and shapes your interactions. This inner preservation also extends to the way you manage your own thoughts. You start filtering the internal noise that once dominated your mind. Negative narratives lose their power as you become more aligned with the deeper truth that emerges from within. Your awakening strengthens not by forcing new beliefs, but by releasing the old ones that no longer resonate with your expanded understanding. And as your awareness settles into this grounded clarity, you begin to sense the final layer of this journey taking shape, a deeper integration that prepares you to walk your path with a steadiness others can feel even before you speak. As spiritual awakening deepens, something subtle but powerful begins to unfold inside you. Your silence becomes purposeful, your choices more deliberate, and your perception more anchored in truth rather than reaction. You start to understand that awakening is not a moment, but a state of awareness you carry into every interaction, every decision, every breath. This clarity shapes your inner world in ways that others may not fully grasp, and yet you feel its presence in everything you do. The more you integrate what you have discovered, the more natural it becomes to protect your energy, your insights, and the sacred experiences that guided you to this point. This integration is not about withdrawing from life, but about engaging with it from a deeper center. You begin to move with intention rather than impulse, alignment rather than pressure. The noise around you loses its influence as your inner voice grows stronger and more grounded. You trust your intuition with a confidence you could not access before, recognizing that it comes from a place untouched by fear or confusion. And through this, you learn that the real transformation of awakening is not in what you know, but in the way you now exist within yourself. This new stability allows you to hold your truth without needing to prove anything to anyone. You walk with a quiet strength, guided by awareness rather than expectation. People may sense something different in you, even if they cannot name it. Your presence becomes calmer, your thoughts clearer, your emotional responses more balanced. It is here, in this inner steadiness, that awakening becomes a way of living rather than a moment of realization. And if you have reached this point of the journey with me, it means something in this message resonated deeply with you. If this content supports your path, consider subscribing so you can continue exploring these insights alongside me. Leave a comment with the phrase, "This message was for me, so I know you felt the truth in these words." And if the video brought clarity, a simple like helps this conversation reach others who may need it. There is also another video waiting for you that expands on this same path of awareness. Click on it and continue this journey with me as we move into even deeper layers of awakening together.